Okay, we are live. Hello, it's Zoe Routh, and we are on webcast number 3 in the Hot Potato series. And we're moving away from fruit, having talked about bad apples and sour grapes, and we are talking about carrots and sticks. So we're on to vegetables and non-edible material. And I love this topic because it's all about how do we get people to do stuff when sometimes they don't want to? What can we use to help them get on with the job? And there's a lot of prevailing wisdom out there in management land about incentives and rewards and that kind of stuff. We want to debunk some of the stuff that is a waste of time and money and focus on the stuff that really works, which is amazing. And I have some good news to share with you. Behold, an egg. My 11-year-old chicken, who has been suffering for the last many weeks with a really disgusting injury to her foot. And we've been nursing her back to health with antibiotics and double daily washing of her foot, decided to produce an egg today. Not that we can eat it because it's full of antibiotics, but that's freaking amazing. 11-year-old chicken still pumping out eggs, even with an injury. She deserves an award. Not sure what kind of reward, certainly no sticks. Maybe some carrots, so she'd like that, or at least sultanas. That's where we've been hiding the antibiotics in, so she'll eat them. Okay. So a little bit of a recap on our previous 2 sessions where we looked at bad apples. And bad apples, we really had to look at what turns people bad. What is bad appleness and what can we do to prevent it? And we talked about how to build trust and build oxytocin in our groups in order to do preventative measures around some of that. And we talked about bad apples as people having difficulty sharing what they were challenged by, and also being negative and resistant. And we talked about being a biochemical drug dealer to help administer some antidotes to that. And in sour grapes last week, what we talked about was what causes people to go bitter, that jealousy and resentment, and how can we do some cure type activities, and how can we do some preventative type activities. So now with carrots and sticks, it's about motivation and inspiration, which is pretty cool. And what I wanted to do is highlight a little bit of the change of context that is affecting how we do motivation and inspiration. So I'm going to share a couple of slides with you to expand on that a little bit. All right, here we go. Play, here we go. Aha. Carrots and sticks, secrets of engagement in a pandemic world. I love this image of a horse because you either whip the horse or dangle a carrot in front of it. Humans are more complex than horses, if you haven't noticed. And yet some similar principles apply. The Slacks world and the VUCA world. So the Slacks world is an acronym you might not have heard of because I made it up, but you might be familiar with it. So back in the 80s, for those of us who can remember the 80s, and before that, we had a very different kind of world, pre-internet, pre-mobile phone. Oh, the world was simple. It was stable. It was linear. Things were just able to go from A to B in a pretty straight line. You could do a 5-year strategic plan and actually work on it consistently through those 5 years. Felt more assured about what the future could bring. It was clear, it was simple. And maybe I'm just remembering things differently, but that's what it felt like. It was less complex than what we have now. And we have right now the VUCA world. Some of you might have heard of VUCA, but eVUCA is my spin on it. And the first letter is exponential. And when we had the pandemic, we had those exponential rise and exponential graphs. And the interesting thing about exponentiality is that the human brain is not equipped to handle it. We are actually equipped to handle a linear type of world where change can happen in a linear type of way. This whole idea of that things double and double and double blows our little human brains. So it's actually very difficult for us to contend with that on a biological brain processing way, but I think we can get it intellectually anyway. So exponential world freaks us out. It's volatile. We know this. We've seen that through COVID and through, well, even before COVID, with all sorts of different interesting things happening in financial markets and global conditions and political relations. And uncertain. The uncertainty is what really irks us, and that puts us into an amygdala hijack, unhelpful emotional mental state, which causes a lot of the bad apples and sour grapes that we've talked about previously. It's complex. Things are very hyper-connected and ambiguous. So we don't know what the future is going to look like. We don't know what the right path is. We just have to muddle through. And from a leadership point of view, this is an extremely challenging world for us to work with, because those are perfect conditions to put people in survival mode. How do you motivate and inspire people when you don't know how long things are going to last under the pandemic? You don't know when the next break will be. You can't put any definition or much definition around the circumstances. It's exhausting. So this is the context in which we find ourselves. And as leaders, we've got to motivate and inspire. So it's a tall order. And I think some organizations get it wrong. Traditional organizations who are really based in the Slacks world have an achiever mentality, and the weight of influence is very heavily slated towards the organization versus the individual. So in traditional businesses in the past, the relationship with employees was a bit like this: authoritarian, I'm the boss, you do what I say. It's hierarchical, I am the boss, I have the last say. It's paternalistic, which means we look after you and you must obey. It's fear-based often, so a lot more sticks at play. And it's a results-first kind of culture. So the 80s, while it was simple and linear and stable, had all this rubbish going for it as well. And it's not just the 80s, it goes further back in history than that. And a lot of organizations are still in this paradigm, and it's not working that well for them, because a lot of our modern contemporary young workers have a different view of the world. And they aspire and want to work in a versatile organization, where instead of looking at results only and being linear in its outcomes, the world is quite different in these organizations. Versatile organizations are, hang on, I see something in the chat box that always makes me nervous because I can't actually read it. So I'm just going to stop that and make sure it's not like, we can't hear a word you're saying, which would just be really terrible. You were getting visuals and no sound. Okay. Is that the same for everybody? And I've just been talking to myself?
I can hear you.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
Okay, so Susan, you might have to check your settings to see which display is working for you. So go into video settings, click on audio, and you might be able to key it up. Okay, so we have crisis averted for most people except for Susan. It is being recorded, Susan, so I'm not sure that she can actually hear me. Let me just put this in the chat box. Try settings and choose new speaker. Okay. All right. Hopefully that will work better for Susan. All right. Fast forward here. Okay. So versatile organizations are consultative, collaborative, and co-creative. So a lot more heavy participation. And this is what energizes people in the workplace these days. It's love-based. We are talking love in the workplace. Not that kind of love. Love, compassionate love, human to human love. And we're people-first organizations. So if we have a traditional organization and an employee who's got in their mind a new paradigm, which is a versatile workplace, which is what they've been groomed and educated in the schooling environment, then you're going to have a big clash. You're going to have demotivated staff who want to work in this versatile environment and are stuck in a traditional environment. So it's important that as leaders and as organizations, we shift, because otherwise we are faced with the cliff of irrelevance. And these are some of the signs. You're going over the cliff of irrelevance if you're stuck in a traditional workplace environment. If it ain't broke, it's fine, which means I don't want to change. It's worked fine in the past. It's a problem. It worked for me as a younger person. It should work for them. I had to jump through hoops. I had to climb the ladder. So if you hear that kind of language, woo, warning bells. We're successful for a reason. And we forget that our context has shifted. So falling over that cliff. I love this one. This new generation is so entitled. No, they just have different expectations. And yes, they expect to get promoted faster. Yes, they expect to have massive salaries straight out the door. But I think COVID has probably knocked that on its head significantly. I'm not sure that many feel very entitled now. I think many feel very grateful that if they have a job, that they still have a job. So this is a challenge for all workplaces to reinvent themselves in this pandemic. Some other signs and symptoms going over the cliff of relevance is staff turnover, unwanted and unexpected staff turnover. Some staff turnover you want, but unwanted ones. Justification of this staff turnover, as in, oh, it's just coincidence. That happened in an organization that I was part of, where we had a number of staff resign, and I raised the issue. I'm like, shouldn't we maybe do some exit interviews and assess what the causes might be? There could be a problem we're not looking at. And the CEO went, nah, it's fine. It's just coincidence. That was the canary in the coal mine going, eh. So don't let that be you. So don't be falling off the cliff of irrelevance, my friends. So let's talk about a few myths around incentives, our little carrots. Peter and people are motivated by money. This is a myth. People actually need money for hygiene purposes. So they need money to pay their bills, and they need money to look after their family and their well-being, etc. Like, there's a base requirement that people need money. It's not necessarily the thing that gets them out of bed. Even the people that we like to attribute being motivated by money, like salespeople, it's not so much about the money as it is about the sense of achieving a target. It's the dopamine and endorphins about hitting targets and feeling like a sense of progress. So all that dopamine stuff is related to that, not necessarily to the dollars themselves. So just throwing money at a squeaky wheel problem in your organization is not going to fix the problem. So designing a reward system that is just financially based is fraught with peril. And Dan Pink, in his book, Drive, explained a lot of this, where there was a lot of research attached to people setting about to do these tasks. And then there was a financial incentive attached to finishing these tasks. And performance actually decreased when they attached money to it. And it's almost like it put a turd on the reward, if you like. It's like, oh, I was kind of interested in just doing this thing for its own sake. But now there's like a financial thing involved in it. It's kind of like less attractive. So that smell tarnished the situation. Isn't that strange? So money is not always a great incentive for people. And we think we need to be very mindful of it, because it can actually skew how people interact with each other and how they behave in the workplace. Okay, let's have a look at the second myth. People need rewards to be motivated. No, actually. People are motivated. Like, motivated is an external thing. It's really the intrinsic rewards that juice people up. So doing something because they care about its purpose, they care about the contribution, they care about the activity for its own sake. There's joy in it. And again, to Dan Pink in his book Drive, he talks about this. His research shows there's three things that make a great place to work. One of them is purpose. One of them is autonomy. Another one is mastery. So purpose, something useful and important to you. Mastery, being able to develop your skills, and autonomy, meaning you get to make decisions for yourself. O.C. Tanner did some amazing research in 2016, which discovered that beyond those three that Dan Pink listed, the number one motivator that made a great place to work was recognition. Who knew? Just saying thank you, or John, that was amazing that you did this and had this kind of impact. That recognition has a significant impact. And I was reading in another study recently that 50% of people surveyed would move to an organization which had better recognition systems in place. Not reward, recognition. So if they felt they were going to get more recognized for their contribution in that workplace, they'd go. Isn't that incredible? So a non-financial thing that you can do to change how people engage with work is simply by saying, having a look at what someone's doing and calling out the good stuff around it. Making people feel welcome, wanted, and worthy is the key theme here. And here's the other myth, is that people need to be inspired, not motivated. Truth is, you kind of need both. You need intrinsic motivation, and you need the external stuff to make it exciting. Not necessarily financial, but all the dopamine related things that we can do in terms of making progress visible, having that bar chart of where you're going on your project, say, for example, having milestones that you can tick off. That's the motivation piece. And the inspiration piece is about what we were just talking about, that I feel like I have a sense of purpose here, that I'm being recognized for my contributions, I'm part of a winning team. So all of these serotonin and oxytocin type of activities, nice blend together. You have the perfect cocktail. A perfect cocktail, perfect biochemical cocktail for inspiration and motivation. Okay, let's see. Some mistakes. Oh, I love these ones. But first, we will hear from the lovely Mary Kay Ash, who is a guru when it comes to cosmetics. So she was a bit of a cosmetic icon. And she says there are two things people want more than sex and money. More than sex and money. Recognition and praise. I think there's probably a job in all of that. Sex, money, recognition, and praise. But that's probably a topic for a different kind of webcast. In any case, I think that's really useful. Recognition and praise is what people crave the most. So mistake with incentives. This is about linking, rewarding individuals. Hang on, I can't read that here. Rewarding individual outcomes. Yes. So that means attaching rewards to individual performers. Fraught with peril. If we think about the Banking Royal Commission, where the institutions set targets for their workers, which had a financial incentive attached to it. And unless those workers met those targets, they wouldn't get paid. So their base salary was at risk. So what happens, do you think? People who are faced with survival and doing a little bit of a dodgy deal, sneaking something through that doesn't quite fit the parameters, they'll do that to make sure that they can keep feeding their kids. So that's a lot of what happened. Like the Banking Royal Commission wasn't all about greed. It was about having these incentive programs which just force people or invited or set the welcome mat, I guess, for people to do not very great things, like setting up fake accounts for people who had passed on, like charging for services that weren't given so they could hit those targets. It does weird things to behavior when we attach incentives to individual performance. I was working with a group of lawyers, and originally they had a budget for a pod of lawyers and their teams. They had lawyers and their secretaries and the juniors all working, and they had a collective budget. Then they changed it so that each individual person had specific budget that they had to meet, specific targets. Well, the culture change was immediate. So what happened is that the lawyers went, holy cow, I have to hit all these sales targets, all these, billables. Otherwise, my take-home pay is affected. So they just went, screw the team. I'm just focusing on my individual deliverables. So there was no more mentoring. There was no more interest in collaboration. Nobody wanted to feed each other work. There was no referrals because it was all about, I need to look after my own stuff. And so this is a big problem. It's also a big problem because how do we reward high achievers? How do we celebrate that without causing this turmoil of difficult behavior? And this is a conundrum that organizations need to balance. How do you do that? How do you encourage people to actually go for it and really push their boundaries and their borders and be a high performer if it's not incentivized individually? There's ways around doing that, and it's about having collective rewards. Interesting story when I interviewed Fiona Kesby, who's the CEO of an organization called Go VA. And she wanted to change this behavior amongst some of her team members where, I'm just gonna stop sharing this for a moment to tell you this story. Stop share, yeah. She wanted to get her team members to show up on time. So she runs an organization in the Philippines where showing up on time is not a big cultural norm. It's not a huge value to them. And a lot of their customers are Australian based, where it is. Showing up on time and being punctual is one of the things that we value. So she wanted to train and teach people's behavior a little bit differently. So what she decided to do was to have a competition. And if you showed up every day, 30 days in a row, on time or early, then you went into the draw for getting your mortgage paid for an entire year, which is an amazing prize. And she thought, this is going to be ace. And it flopped. It flopped because culturally, actually, people are not motivated to be by individual reward. They're a very communal society. So she changed the competition. She had it team-based. She said, if everybody in your team shows up every day early or on time, then the whole team will get a reward. It wasn't everybody gets their mortgage paid, but it was something juicy. And what happened is that compliance of that timeliness skyrocketed because nobody wanted to let the team down. It wasn't about individual reward. It was about, how do I contribute to the team? So this is an interesting example of how we can think about motivation to change behavior without screwing the culture, which I think is a really useful case study. Okay, so now back a little bit to some of our mistakes here. Okay. Next one is ritualizing rewards. Chip and Dan Heath in their book, Moments, talks about what makes moments really special in an organizational culture. Like, how can we engineer moments that create an amazing experience for people? And a couple of things they realized or worked out in their research is that surprise is a really important way to create a memorable moment, a spike in someone's memory by having it be surprising. And if you introduce rewards and they become expected, the surprise factor, novelty factor diminishes. A classic example of that is in the US, and they have a firmly entrenched bonus system as part of a lot of corporate America, which means that as an employee, you work all year. If the company does well and you achieve well as an individual performer, you get a bonus out of the profits. So it varies from year to year, supposedly. But the thing is, people expect that money now. They kind of feel it's part of the remuneration package. And yet there's a little bit more, a little bit less year to year, but it's kind of what you expect every year. So the impact of being part of the business and getting a reward package kind of goes, it doesn't have the amazing impact that it might have had when they first introduced it. So it loses its appeal. You get a little bit blasé about the chocolate if you have chocolate 3 times a day. Kind of makes you a little bit sick, actually. Let me see, was there another example around that? I think that was the best one, I think. Yeah. So we don't want to ritualize. I remember now. So I was speaking to a CEO at a council, and this is a great example of what to do if you want to make rewards and incentives surprising and interesting and valued ongoing. Is during the pandemic, first lockdown, after about 6 to 8 weeks, the CEO sent her team members each a box of chocolates out of the blue, saying, thank you, you guys have been amazing, you've been adapting really well, staying positive, etc. I want to say thank you. So, and that was really well received. It was like, that so thoughtful. If she did it every month, like I said, you get a bit sick of the chocolates. So we need to be careful of how much we ritualize rewards. I think there is a nice balance, though, if you have staff recognition awards that are nominated by the peers. That is something special and different. That's kind of a different kind of ritual. That's a recognition ritual as opposed to a reward ritual. So be mindful of that. And the third one is using sticks as motivators. Oh my goodness. And I think we can do this so badly. I want to talk about Venus. Venus was my foreman when I was a tree planter. That was his nickname. His real name was Miles, but Venus was his tree planting name, and he was in charge of us. And I remember this speech that he gave. It was meant to motivate us. And he said, I think it was like a Friday or something, and we were hoping to have a day off the next day, and we get a day off if we hit all of our planting targets. So tree planting, you have all these little trees, seedlings that you have to go and plant throughout a logged area. It's back-breaking, hard physical labor. And you can plant, depending on the type of territory, you can plant anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 trees as an individual. So this is Venus's speech to us. I have a dream. Good start. I have a dream that at the end of today, we wrap up, we've hit our targets, we drive into town, I go to the hotel, I have a nice shower, I'm cracking a beer at 5 p.m., having a nice pizza. So if we all get on, do their job, my dream can come true. Like, I don't really care if you get to have a shower and have pizza, Miles, because I'm going to have to be flogging myself today to hit those targets. So it was like, he totally missed it. So, and the stick part of the incentive was, if we didn't hit that, you'd have a really grumpy Venus on your hands. And he was a miserable son of a gun. So you can use mood to try and incentivize people. That just completely flopped. So not only was his dream of him enjoying the rewards of our hard labor, which is just retarded, ridiculous. It was trying to put a stick in there too, because we know what he was like if he was disappointed. So yeah, we don't want to use those mistakes. So how do you motivate your team is what we're going to talk about in our breakout room. So we've got a little bit of time. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. How many of us are there? A handful. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, and I want you to talk about what has worked in your experience to motivate, inspire teams. So we want a handful of tips and tricks from people. Okay. So before I do that, is there anything that needs to be clarified? If you do want anything clarified, please unmute yourself and ask, or raise your hand physically. Otherwise, I think you guys look good. Good to go. So from motivation and inspiration, what has worked? I'm going to put you into breakout rooms now for 10 minutes. Let's see. Off we go. I'm going to move to breakout room 3. Okay. See you in 10 minutes. You should get an invitation now to join. Oh, pause recording. Fantastic. I should have asked you to nominate a representative of each group. It didn't happen. So I would like to invite a person from, I don't know, which breakout room number 1. I'm not sure who that was. Who was it? Who would like to volunteer to share some good stuff from your discussion?
I'm happy to share some of the stuff. I don't know if I was group 1 or not, but it was Linda, Marie, and myself.
Okay.
Just having a bit of a chat. I was saying I'm not in a sort of leading a team at the moment, but just talking about some not-for-profit organisation that I was the chair of for a while, and how we manage that, sort of bringing it back to the core reason of why we were all there in voluntary director positions. Bringing it back to why. The purpose of why we were there, to take us forward into those sort of more difficult partnership and financial meetings and that sort of things. The things can really grind people, or that, that are challenging, that aren't necessarily so enjoyable. So, just trying to keep people motivated on along those sort of lines. And then just had a bit of discussion around, the bank, the finance sector at the moment, with the restructuring of, bonuses and how they're going to recognise and reward people in that way. And Marie also had a really interesting, I think it's fascinating. I want to know a bit more about it, called My Deal. So they've got a bit of a unique, tailored structure around how they, discussing individually what people want out of how they being rewarded and recognised. Maybe you can explain a bit better, Marie.
You're doing really well. I was just saying, at like an annual review, but instead of it being, just a discussion around salaries and REM, you kind of put that to one side and focus on what's important to you. So make sure they understand what's expected and what they need and support and that sort of thing. But then also, what could the company give you that makes your life better? And I was saying for some people, maybe not at the moment, but for some people it was, I've got family overseas. If I could go and work there for a couple of months, that'd be awesome. I was saying I work in a largely male organization because it's tech, but typically if their partner had a child, they could get some parental leave and take it whenever it made sense, so they could support their partner or allow them to go back to work. So it's very different because what's important to one person may not be for someone else. And so that just allows people to get value out of work and personal life.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, they're working for a reward that's tailor-made for them, which I think is fantastic. And so it's a positive self-perpetuating cycle, isn't it? It's like, I set that incentive. It's meaningful to me personally. The organization agreed to it. So I'm going to work hard to get there. Yeah, nice. Very nice. Thank you very much for sharing, guys. And the other group, I guess that was Jessica, Jeffrey, and Lernia, who would like to have a quick sum of that. That would look like you, Jessica. Dub yourself in. I saw the hand movements. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Well, I think we can. Let's have a go.
Okay. My audio wasn't working earlier. Hopefully it is now. Sorry.
Bad speaker. You're dobbed out. We'll take Jeffrey or Lernia. Jeffrey, I'm going to dob you in. There we go.
Okay. Look, I was just saying that rather than do carrots and sticks, or do a lot more carrots and hardly ever do sticks. So a lot of recognition. I work in a fairly hierarchical organisation, so it's about looking beyond the hierarchy and really just targeting on people's individual achievements and recognising it, and therefore, I suppose, a lack of recognition is the stick rather than actually undertaking a stick.
Like it. Yeah. So I like it. So not getting recognition is the incentive to work. Oh, I love it. That's really good. So yeah, it's kind of, well, you're working for recognition, but if you don't get any recognition, that's painful. Yeah, nice. And I agree with you. Carrots. Actually, I was working with an organization last week, and they have some stick incentives because they're a manufacturing organization and they have to meet their targets, or it's got significant repercussions. There's not a lot of flex room in there. So they do have disincentives to fall behind, I guess, if you like. And their point of view is that you need a mix of both. I think we need to assess what's the impact on culture when we do that, though. Be curious to see if they got rid of that, to see what happened. Okay, well, thank you everybody for sharing. Hopefully you had fun in the chat rooms. I'm going to share what I think, and it's probably some of the things that you think too. So let's have a go. Here we go. One of the things I think it's important to remember is that motivation is biochemical, and I was alluding to that before. Motivation is biochemical, and you really want to organize your reward and recognition structure around that. So go back to bad apples and have a look at how to be a biochemical drug dealer, and that's really a critical thing. So how do you make incentives that are externally focused? That's the reward piece. And how do you do things that are all recognition based? That's the oxytocin and serotonin piece. And when you blend them all together, it creates a really nice cocktail for people to drink when it comes to being motivated and inspired at the same time. The next thing I think is important as a principle is that you inspire by caring. And I love Marie's example in terms of what their system is. You have to really care to administrate a system like that, which is what's important to you, I care. And let's create something around that is meaningful to you. It's a caring principle. And when I interviewed Rachel Robertson, who was the first female expedition leader to Antarctica, she shared this story. At the end of her 12 months of leading this small team of 18 to 19 people, which was fraught with all sorts of difficult people dynamics, the feedback to her was that the team found her inspiring. And she's like, wow, that's wonderful. I wonder what it was that I did that caused me to feel to be so inspiring to them. And she thought, is it my wonderful spreadsheet of how organized I was? Or maybe it was how I handled that emergency crisis when the chopper went down. We had to go 500 clicks away to rescue the team so they wouldn't die. Maybe that was what they found inspiring. Turns out No, something a lot more simpler than that. What the team found inspiring about her leadership was the fact that she remembered stuff, little stuff, things like she would be talking to Jeffrey of an evening, and Jeffrey might mention that his son had a sporting team commitment and he had to go and just check in with the family to see how it went. And so the next morning, over breakfast, she saw Jeffrey and she'd go, "Hey, Jeffrey, how did your son go at the carnival?" And it was those little things that she remembered in conversations about what was meaningful to her team, the names of their family members, the activities that were relevant to them, and just being interested and showing care. That is what they found inspiring. Not grandiose visions, not like hero type stuff, but that. And that gives us great hope, isn't it? If we just be a little bit more human with each other, we can go a long way in being inspiring to others. This is an interesting one in terms of the third principle, is that attitude can count more than performance. I was just reading a piece of research about this, and in terms of what's better for an organization, to try and reform and get rid of toxic employees, or to focus on hiring gun performers, like A-grade top performers. What costs and benefits of which strategy? And it turns out that it's way more costly to an organization to put up with toxic behavior than the rewards of hiring top performers. So if you're going to do, what's the cost benefit? You're better off getting rid of toxic behavior than you are to invest all this time and energy in top performers, so that the generally good-hearted individual can be harnessed and make a greater contribution than the top performer, say, for example, or just trying to minimize the harm of the toxic person. So the point is a lot of leaders, when you ask them what their biggest regret was, is that they tolerated poor behavior for much, much too long. So we need to address things as quickly as possible and focus on the good-hearted, positive attitude people who don't necessarily rise and shine above the others because of their outstanding performance, but are good, solid contributors. And that will make a successful team greater indeed. So the benefits are there for just doing the good thing of being good people, showing that you care. So some solutions are this. So link rewards to behaviors, not just outcomes. So what does this mean? So instead of just hitting targets, what are the behaviors that you want to reinforce? We're kind of like Pavlov's dogs, aren't we? So when we show recognition for a positive behavior, like Jessica, the way that you handled that interaction with people was really solid. You demonstrated excellent facilitation skills. I'd love to see you host a team meeting next week. Is an example of recognition. Good on you, Jessica. It's about recognizing people on the spot and encouraging that positive behavior. When we do that has a really huge impact. So when we focus on the behaviors that we want to reinforce as opposed to the outcomes, we actually affect the whole system of an organization as opposed to just focusing on the lag measures. So lead measures, lead indicators as opposed to lag indicators is what we should be rewarding and recognizing. Number two, another solution, and I keep saying it, is design rewards and recognition like a drug dealer, a biochemical drug dealer. So make things, make progress visible. So having things that you can tick off, milestones that you recognize, having targets that people can work towards. So you have all those dopamine and endorphins, and making sure that people feel included and welcome and wanted, which is all the serotonin and oxytocin stuff. Balance that, and you're getting top marks in terms of motivating and incentivizing people. All right, and the last tip is huddles, stop the puddles, and make for cuddles. What does that mean? It means that the way that we run meetings has a massive impact on morale, inspiration, and motivation. And I think this one simple change can make a big difference in how people show up and engage. How we start meetings is really important. So for example, if you've noticed that each webcast, I ask you to answer a positive related question into the chat box, such as, what are you celebrating? What are you proud of? What's something good that happened? And this way we tap into the positive biochemistry right away in a meeting. And this is how we can become really great biochemical drug dealer, is by asking positive questions. And there's 4 types of questions that we can use to set up our meetings. And it doesn't take very long, even in big groups, to do this. And I touch on this in my 3rd book, Loyalty. The 4 types of questions you can ask are ones around appreciation. What are you appreciating? And just get everybody to share that. Another one is gratitude. What are you grateful for? And that's a deeper kind of more personal sharing. The 3rd one is love. What do you love about this project? What do you love about this team? It's like a bigger, deeper conversation. And the last piece is around compassion. Who can we support today? Who needs help here today? So when we have those 4 types of questions in play, and we do those at the beginning of a team meeting, it creates a very different mood than if like, right, what's on the agenda today? And I do this with my small team. There's 3 of us. And every Monday we have a meeting, and I like to say, what are we celebrating? What's working? What are we happy about? And it sets the tone. It's like a tone of positivity and optimism and so on. So we need to build up to that, of course. And that's why the 7 habits for oxytocin and trust out of bad apples is such a useful checklist. Okay, so those are my 3 solutions. Link rewards to behaviors and values, not just outcomes. Design rewards and incentives like a biochemical drug dealer. And 3, reshape your huddles so that you get cuddles, not puddles of tears. All right. So the other thing too now is what do you need to develop next? How are we doing on time? Great. Cindy Wigglesworth says that the development of an organization is limited by the development of its leaders. And I think that's totally important. And there's some fundamental leadership skills that we need to be across, and then there's some advanced leadership skills. So I'm going to walk you through both sets, and then we're going to do a little audit as we go along through that. Okay. So these are the 7 key fundamental leadership skills. The first one is decoding. Hang on, I reckon I didn't share that, did I? Just put it up. Yeah. Let's try that again. Okay. First one is decoding people. How good are you at reading people? Do you understand people's behaviors, their motivations? Do you have different models that you can use to unpack what's going on for people? I've shared a couple during this whole series, such as the 4 devils of people stuff, such as the biochemical drivers. Those are 2 examples of maps. Other maps are things like Myers-Briggs or DISC or some sort of profiling instrument to help us decode and understand people. Second one is emotional mastery. So how we show up as leaders makes a massive impact. So do you show up composed and centered and inspired yourself, or are you just dragging your butt from meeting to meeting? Delivering effective feedback and receiving feedback is pretty critical. Coaching and delegation. Actually, they're 2 separate ones, and in the survey, they're separate. Coaching is being able to ask questions to get people to solve their own problems. And delegation is the ability to give tasks to people in a way that they embrace them and can work on them independently without drowning or feeling like they're micromanaged. Difficult conversations, a perennial important one. Every leader has to have these, and we need to master them well. Developing high-performing teams. So how good are you? Are you galvanizing the troops and having a well-knit, tight, bonded team that feels awesome to be part of? And the 7th one is managing your time and energy. Do you always have a little bit left in the tank at the end of the day? Do you feel like you crossed a lot of I's and dotted T's? No, dotted I's and crossed T's. I knew that I didn't say that quite right. Dotted I's and crossed T's. Do you feel like you're on track? All right, so what I want to do is run a little poll with you guys, and I want you to tell me in the poll what you are masterful at. Which one of the fundamentals have you mastered? Very seasoned, experienced leaders here. So have a go at voting. It's multiple choice. You can pick whichever ones you feel like you've mastered and vote there. So hopefully you can see the poll. Yes? Can you see the poll? Yes. Okay. So go ahead and vote. Which ones have you mastered? Dun, 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 dun. This is my waiting while people complete the poll music. Da, da, da. See what people are voting. You have 15 more seconds to vote if you're going to vote. Ooh, very interesting. I will share the results. It's all anonymous. And 5, 4, 3, everyone has voted. So I will end the poll and let's share it. Okay, share results. Here, look at this. People feel like they've mastered reading people. Cool. That always is a shock to me. I'm like, really? I think people don't know how to read people. But there you go. You guys have mastered it. Next top performer looks like it's coaching. Fantastic. Difficult conversations. Oh my God, that's amazing. And what else? Followed by emotional mastery and feedback, and what's at the bottom, and delegation. At the bottom, we got developing high performing teams and managing time and energy. Really? Fascinating. So we need to work on that, don't we? Okay, well, at least you know where where you need to go with your fundamentals. All right, I'll close that off. And I want to take you through the advanced leadership skills that you need to master as well, because that's in your workbooks. I want to make sure that you have an understanding of what I'm talking about with this. And then we'll do a quick poll on that to sum up. Okay. So advanced leadership skills, you need to balance between next and now and next, what's urgent and what's coming up, and team and task. And that gives you these 4 areas: leading culture, change, and strategy and performance. In leading culture, you need to be able to map, manage, and measure culture. And yes, you can map and manage it and measure it. Leading change is about having an experimentalist mindset, evolution, not revolution, people, and process. Leading strategy is about systems thinking, scenario planning, and innovation practice. So this is all about dealing with the complexity of issues. And around performance, are you using exponential technologies? Can you access peak performance flow state? And do you know the neuroscience when it comes to peak performance? And are you using that effectively? Okay, so that is the broad brush skills there. And we're going to do just a quick poll on that too. Okay, relaunch poll. I don't want poll 1. I want a different poll. Where's my poll 2? Here we go. This question is different. It's which of these do you need to master? Leading change, leading culture, leading strategy, or leading performance. So which one do you need to master? So what's the gap in your experience here? Okay, and might be multiples. All right, 6 people have voted. Let's end the poll and have a look. Share results. All right, so leading strategy is something that people feel they need to develop, as well as leading performance. I'm just taking that's my little camera taking a picture of the poll results. That's fascinating. So leading change and leading culture, you guys are all good to go, relatively speaking. Fantastic. Those 4 meta skills in advanced leadership is what we immerse ourselves in our Amplifiers program, which I haven't spoken a lot about throughout the course of this webinar series. This is the invitation to you to think about this program. And you've had a little bit of taster of what it's like, where I run webcasts once a month, and then we have a deeper dive on an immersion virtually for those who aren't in Canberra and can't travel to Canberra. We have a virtual option as well. And I'm not going to go through all the detail of that program. I will talk to you individually about that if it's something that's on your radar and you're interested in afterwards. All right, so let me just sum up for you because we've got 2 minutes and I want to make sure we get away on time because you all have important, busy lives to get back to. And I have a chicken to put to bed. 3 steps to take right now. Start your huddles with something positive. Easy to do. Be kind and pay attention. Easy to do. Catch someone doing something right. Good and easy and fun to do. So beware of these mistakes I've seen people make when they attend a series like this is you don't review your notes. It's just something you attended. And so make sure you do review your notes and implement something. That comes into the second mistake I see people. They don't implement anything. and they don't invest in developing their leadership skills. Leaders are learners, so make sure you're doing something to keep growing yourself. Don't try and go it alone, because especially now leading through the pandemic is incredibly challenging. And we need as many support networks as we possibly get, especially if we're cocooned in our own work from home environments. And the last one, beware of believing you have it handled already. Because that is a surefire way to fall off the cliff of irrelevance. And I love this quote from Voltaire: the more I read, the more, I can't read that because it's covered by my little mistake, my little screen thing, the more certain I am that I know nothing. I know nothing. And all smart people come to that realization eventually. I know a lot and I know nothing. So keep on learning. My book is available, and that is me. I wanted to thank you all for participating in this series. It's been wonderful to have a little bit of exchange with you over the last few weeks, and I would love to work with you all. And I will be following up with you to see what was useful for you through this, and did you get everything you wanted to out of it, and what's next for you. Before you sail off into the distance, I'd love to have in the chat box something that you felt you were appreciating that you got through this series that we've participated in. And that would be a wonderful send-off. So what was one thing that you appreciate from the work that we've done together? And in the meantime, while you do that, I have so much gratitude for all of you and the work that you're doing with people, and it's the fact that you care, that you've actually come on this webinar, and that gives me great hope for the future of leadership in general. So I'm going to stop the recording, read the lovely comments, and that would be awesome. Actually, I'll read the comments and then stop the recording. Question types to create a positive mood. Thank you, Lernia. Interactions in the breakouts. Really good to meet some new people and get some diverse thoughts. Yeah, I think that's one of the values of doing a webinar series like this, or something like Amplifiers, is meeting other people. It's not just hanging out with fabulous me, which is fantastic, I know. It's about the other people who are going through similar challenges with you, or different challenges. You can learn from each other. Jessica says, clear parameters and takeaways to action easily. Yes, it's all about doing something that you can get going right now. Sharing knowledge and excellent examples. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. Easy to use checklists and tips, which have been useful in sharing with your team. And you love the book. Jeffrey, thank you so much. I love it. Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear my latest work is being appreciated and useful. Feel free to leave a review on Amazon. That is also helpful, but I love that you shared it with me. And Dan loves the book too. Oh God, that's great. That's so good. And we're just launching all of our publicity for the book right now. So you'll see it pop up, hopefully in different media articles and different magazines. I've been writing lots and lots of journal articles for my publicist lately on the book. That's it. So long, and thanks for all the fish. You guys are awesome. I'll be in touch. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the spring. Stay well, stay safe.
Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.